19-year-old Carlos Mendoza was driving his night shift as an Uber driver through Nashville when he received a pickup request at 2:17 a.m. from someone named T at an upscale apartment complex downtown. When a blonde woman in dark clothing got into his back seat, quietly crying and asking to go to Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, Carlos had no idea he was driving one of the world's biggest pop stars to what could be the final goodbye with her youngest fan, an 8-year-old girl named Sophia who was losing her battle with leukemia. Before we dive into this heartbreaking midnight journey that would test both a driver's compassion and a superstar's humanity, I need to ask you something. If stories about unexpected connections during life's most difficult moments and the power of music to bring comfort in times of grief matter to you, please hit that subscribe button right now. These stories take weeks to research and verify, and your subscription helps us continue sharing the moments that remind us all that sometimes the most important rides we take aren't to destinations, but toward hope in the face of heartbreak. Now, back to Carlos's unforgettable night. Carlos Mendoza had been driving for Uber for 6 months, picking up extra shifts between his community college classes to help support his younger sister Maria's medical expenses. Maria had been battling type 1 diabetes since she was 12, and even with insurance, the costs of her insulin, monitoring equipment, and doctor visits created a constant financial strain on their family. Working the overnight shift meant dealing with a different kind of clientele than the daytime rushes. Late-night workers heading home from restaurants and hospitals, party-goers needing safe rides, and occasionally, people going through personal crises who needed transportation during the most difficult moments of their lives. Carlos had learned to read the energy of his passengers and provide exactly what they needed, whether that was friendly conversation or respectful silence. The pickup request that came through at 2:17 a.m. seemed routine enough. Someone named T requesting a ride from the luxury Pinnacle Apartments to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Carlos had made this route many times before, usually transporting medical staff between shifts or family members rushing to see loved ones in the hospital. When Carlos arrived at the apartment complex, he texted that he was waiting outside as required. A few minutes later, a woman emerged from the building wearing a dark hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over blonde hair. Even in the dim parking lot lighting, Carlos could see that she was crying. She got into the back seat quickly and quietly, keeping her head down as she settled in. "Hi," Carlos said gently. "I'm Carlos. You're going to Vanderbilt Medical Center, right?" "Yes," the woman replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Children's Hospital specifically, if you know where that is." "I do," Carlos confirmed, recognizing the particular sadness in her voice that he'd heard from other passengers making similar late-night trips to the Children's Hospital. "Are you okay? Do you need anything before we head out?" The woman was quiet for a moment, and Carlos could hear her taking shaky breaths in the back seat. "I'm going to see someone," she said finally. "A little girl. She's very sick, and I might not get another chance to see her." Carlos felt his heart clench. He had driven enough people to children's hospitals to understand the weight of what she wasn't saying directly. "I'm sorry," he said softly, pulling out of the parking lot and beginning the 20-minute drive to the hospital. "That must be really hard." As they drove through the quiet Nashville streets, Carlos occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror and could see the woman staring out the window, tears visible on her cheeks in the passing streetlights. He wanted to offer comfort but wasn't sure what to say to a stranger facing what seemed like an impossible situation. About 10 minutes into the drive, the woman spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. What's your favorite song? I know that's random, but I need to think about something else for a minute." Carlos thought for a moment. "Honestly, Love Story by Taylor Swift. I know it might sound cheesy for a 19-year-old guy to like that song, but it reminds me of my girlfriend Elena, and how sometimes love stories work out even when everything seems impossible." He heard a sharp intake of breath from the back seat, but when he looked in the mirror, the woman had turned to look directly out the side window. "That's a beautiful song," she said quietly. "Do you know the words?" "Pretty much," Carlos laughed. "My sister Maria plays Taylor Swift constantly when I drive her to her doctor appointments. I've probably heard every song she's ever made." There was a long pause, and then the woman asked, Would you mind if I sang it?" I know that's weird, but singing sometimes helps me when I'm scared. Go ahead, Carlos said. Whatever helps. What happened next made Carlos's hands tighten on the steering wheel. The woman in his back seat began singing Love Story in a voice that was so achingly beautiful, so perfectly controlled despite her obvious emotional state, that it gave him chills. Her voice filled the car with a richness and clarity that made the familiar song sound completely new. We were both young when I first saw you, she sang, and Carlos found himself listening in amazement to what sounded like a professional quality performance happening in his Uber. As she moved through the verses, Carlos began to recognize something familiar about her voice, but it seemed impossible. He kept driving, mesmerized by the performance while trying to focus on the road. When she finished the song, there was silence in the car for a moment. That was incredible, Carlos said honestly. You have an amazing voice. Are you a singer? Another pause. Something like that. They were approaching the hospital now, and Carlos could feel the weight of whatever goodbye awaited his passenger. He wanted to say something encouraging, but he didn't want to intrude on her private pain. The little girl you're going to see, he said carefully. I bet having you there will mean everything to her, even if it's hard. She's 8 years old, the woman said, her voice breaking. Her name is Sophia. She has leukemia, and the doctors say, tonight might be her last good night for a while. Her mom wrote to me because Sophia wanted to meet me before things get worse. As Carlos pulled up to the children's hospital entrance, he finally understood. The voice, the song, the reason an 8-year-old girl with cancer would want to meet someone badly enough for them to come at 2 a.m., everything clicked into place. You're Taylor Swift, he said quietly, not as a question but as a realization. Taylor looked up and met his eyes in the rearview mirror for the first time during the ride, her face streaked with tears. Yes, she said simply. And I'm terrified, because I don't know how to say goodbye to a little girl who's dying, but I can't let her down. Carlos sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing that he had just driven Taylor Swift to what might be her final visit with a young fan. Can I tell you something? Carlos said, turning around to face her. My sister Maria has diabetes, and we've spent a lot of nights in hospitals like this one. The kids there, they're not looking for perfect words or for you to fix everything. They just want to know that someone they admire cares enough to show up. Taylor wiped her eyes and nodded. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for just being kind during this ride. I know you probably have questions, but you just let me be scared and sad without making it about anything else. Do you want me to wait? Carlos asked. I don't know how long you'll be, but I could stay in case you need a ride back. You don't have to do that, Taylor said. You probably have other passengers to pick up. Actually, Carlos said, checking his phone, my shift was supposed to end at 2:30. I just took this ride because it was on my way home. I can wait if you want. Taylor looked at him with obvious gratitude. That would mean a lot to me. I'm not sure I should drive myself home after this. Carlos parked in the hospital's pickup area and watched Taylor walk into the children's hospital, her shoulders squared despite her obvious emotional state. He settled in to wait, thinking about his own sister and the nights they had spent in hospitals, and feeling honored to have played even a small role in getting Taylor to this important moment. 2 hours later, at 4:45 a.m., Taylor emerged from the hospital looking exhausted but somehow lighter than when she had gone in. She got back into Carlos's car and sat quietly for a moment. How is she? Carlos asked gently. She's incredible, Taylor said, smiling through fresh tears. She sang Shake It Off with me, and she told me jokes, and she made me promise to write a song about being brave even when you're scared. She said she wasn't ready to say goodbye yet, so we decided this was just see you later. As Carlos began driving Taylor back to her apartment, she asked about his sister Maria and her diabetes management. When Carlos mentioned the ongoing costs and stress of managing her condition, Taylor listened intently. Carlos, she said as they arrived at her building, can I ask you for your Venmo or something? I want to pay you for tonight, and not just the ride fare." "The regular fare is fine," Carlos said. "Honestly, it was an honor to drive you tonight." "Please," Taylor insisted. "You did something important tonight. You got me there safely, and you were exactly what I needed during that ride. Let me pay you properly." Carlos reluctantly shared his Venmo information, expecting maybe a generous tip for the unusual circumstances. The next morning, Carlos woke up to notifications that made him think his phone was malfunctioning. Taylor Swift had sent him $25,000 with the note, "For Maria's medical care and your college expenses. Thank you for getting me to Sophia safely and for treating a scared person with kindness instead of treating a celebrity with fanfare, T.S." But the money was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, Carlos received a call from Taylor's management team. Taylor wanted to set up an ongoing medical fund for Maria, and had also arranged for Carlos to receive a full scholarship to complete his business degree at Nashville State Community College. "She was really impacted by your kindness that night," the representative explained, "and she wants to make sure you and your sister have the support you need." Carlos and Taylor maintained a friendship after that night, with Carlos occasionally driving for her team during Nashville events. But more importantly, the experience taught both of them about the power of showing up for people during their most difficult moments. Maria's diabetes management became significantly easier with Taylor's ongoing support, and Carlos was able to focus on his studies instead of working multiple jobs to cover medical expenses. "That night changed everything for my family," Carlos would say when sharing his story. "But it started because I just tried to be a good driver for someone who was going through a hard time. I wasn't driving Taylor Swift. I was driving a person who was scared and sad and needed to get somewhere important." 3 months later, Carlos received an invitation to attend one of Taylor's Nashville concerts, where he learned that Sophia was in remission and had been well enough to attend the show. During the concert, Taylor dedicated Love Story to a brave little girl named Sophia and a kind driver named Carlos, who reminded me that the most important journeys are the ones we take for love. The ride that night became a reminder that sometimes our most meaningful work happens not when we're trying to impress people or achieve something great, but when we're simply present for someone else's crisis with patience, kindness, and respect for their humanity. "I learned something that night," Taylor said in later interviews about the experience. "I learned that when you're facing something impossible, what you need isn't someone to fix it or make it better. You need someone to witness your courage and help you get where you need to go. Carlos did that for me, and I hope I was able to do that for Sophia." The story became a powerful reminder that we never know when we might be called upon to provide exactly what someone needs during their darkest hour, and that sometimes the most profound gift we can offer is simply showing up with kindness and staying present for whatever comes next. Sometimes the most important destinations aren't places, but moments of connection during life's most difficult journeys. Carlos Mendoza's decision to treat a crying passenger with kindness instead of curiosity proved that true service isn't about recognition or fame. It's about being present for someone else's crisis with patience and respect. Taylor Swift's midnight ride to see a dying child reminded us that even global superstars need support during their most vulnerable moments, and that the simple act of getting someone safely to where they need to be can become a sacred responsibility. The most beautiful thing about that night wasn't the generous reward, but the reminder that when we approach others, pain with genuine compassion, we create space for healing and hope that extends far beyond a single moment of kindness.